Well, thank you, everyone. So I'm 60 years old, but I have a 4-year-old. Right.
True.
Right. So that's so.
Way to go, Paul! You the man.
I still got it, baby. Yeah. You got it. You got it.
No more need to be said.
But the deal is, I've got an 8-year-old, a 22-year-old, and a 29-year-old, and pretty much my 29-year-old needs as much help from me today as my 4-year-old needs at times. So don't ever think they grow up and they're on their own, because they're never on their own. But that all being said, I raised my family.
You are married, right?
Huh?
You're married, right?
Oh, I'm married. Yep, I'm married.
So no young ladies, you're not available for any more children.
Right.
You're done with kids. Mm-hmm.
Right.
You live where? Where do you live at?
Right.
What area do you live in?
Perry Hall. Yep, I live in Perry Hall, right here in Baltimore County. I've raised my family to believe in God like I do, and they all do, and that's nice. That's a big accomplishment, because even that these days is a huge challenge for a lot of people to take, right? We know, right? So, and when times are tough, I always tell people, if you wake up out of your bed each morning and you look around you and all you have is what you see around you and you don't believe anything else is there to help you, you're going to have problems, brother, for your whole life. Sisters and brothers, you're going to have problems your whole life. You've got to have someone to put your faith into when times are tough. And when times are good, you need to thank that person too. Don't ever forget that. And that's all I want to say. I'm not trying to lecture you, I'm just trying to tell you, 60 years old, I'm older than most of the people in this room by a long shot. So I've had a lot of experience. Wasn't always that way. I wasn't always the saint that I'm trying to make myself up here to look to be, because trust me, my friends, yeah, amen, right. I was not. But I've come a long way from that. I grew a long way from where I should have been, the way I was raised by my father. My mother was a saint, my father was just a maniac, and thank God I didn't go down that path somehow. I don't know, but anyway, so.
Yeah, so let's just talk briefly to start off, and we'll continue the conversation. So we're talking about protection. Paul and I, again, I've known Paul over a decade now. We've done business together. We do have some partnerships together that we're working on.
Right.
And then, of course, we want to talk about this a little bit. And this topic just has so many layers to it. I think I've learned from you. And really what the apropos thing about today is with the banks and what's going on with the banks. Hopefully, as business people, that you're really following this stuff. I've learned, again, through my brother-in-law, he's taught me a lot about constantly researching things to be aware of where we are right now. You know, I missed it by a day when Silicon Valley Bank fell apart there. I saw it, but I didn't really, you know how you see something but you don't really pay attention to it? Then my mind started clicking right away what's going on. And if you see there's a little lag, but you know, talk a little bit about what's going on with the banks today, and then how protection comes into that.
Yeah, well, you know, we were on a downward interest rate, borrowing rate since the 80s, right? The rates just kept going down and down. I mean, you all know. And then all of a sudden the rates start coming back up, and then all of a sudden what happens? It starts affecting the banks. Well, the banks start freaking out, and now what? We had 25 banks that failed last year, but you'll not hear about that in the news. We had almost another 20 banks this year already, and it's only March that have already failed. So a lot of us rely on banks to get money from, to buy properties with, to build additions with, to encourage other parts of our business with. So at least some of us have to be thinking, well, where am I going to go to get my money if banks start freaking out and stop lending money the way they did back in 2008? And if anyone's around, you remember that. It was tough to get loans then. I mean, real tough.
Yeah, our business kind of came to a grinding halt, Joe and I,
right,
when we were working it.
Right.
And we had no real heads up, right? All of a sudden.
It just kind of boom, and they kind of kept it secretive. So I'm kind of here to help you guys out with some strategies that can help you against the secrets that are being held by these banks and by our own government. And I love the United States, don't get me wrong, but man, I don't trust the politicians. I'm sorry, I just don't trust any of them. Yeah, right? Whether you're liberal, Democrat, Republican, I don't care, man. I don't trust none of those guys. None of them. Yeah, so even the ones I vote for, I don't. I keep a short leash on you, baby. You know what I mean? Yeah, that's just all there is to it.
So a few years ago, you actually mentioned this to me. It was ironic because Paul said to me, he says, you know what? If you got money in a 401k, Shane, that's not 100% safe. And I'm like, what are you talking about, Paul?
Right.
And then you went on to explain that to me.
So 401k plans come under what's called tax law. And tax law, the government can control it. They can seize it. They can continue to let you have a tax deduction or not. They can change that. You've seen if they're trying to change things now with with the Roth IRAs. And then contract law is what other types of things come under. And the contract laws are a lot tougher to have changes in. Annuities, life insurance, those kind of things.
Yeah, I was going to say, you want to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah,
so we definitely understand the government's system. And,
Right.
and honestly, before Silicon went down, and even before, there was a couple of things that were being said in the government prior to that. And of course, we know all the conspiracy theories are out there. But I really didn't think about the 401ks until recently, what your words, they kind of came back to.
Right. So other countries have confiscated their citizens' 401k plans. Crete, Venezuela did it. Okay. In other words, they took people's money and said, "We'll give you an IOU. We'll let you know when you can have it back." People are like, "Oh, no. Now that's not going to work." But that's how it is, and it could happen here too. Some people might say it's a bit of a stretch to say that could happen in the United States. Really? Is it really? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the number 17 bank, that was the 16th or 17th largest bank in the country.
Right.
We didn't realize, I mean, back in the day, when we were young, the federal...
Savings and loans.
Yeah. So savings and loans, right? They would fail.
I hear you laughing out there, veterans. You know what I'm talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. The fact is, if you guys had money in SVB, or if I had money in SVB, I have had my own business before. I had 100 employees with a cleaning business. I can't even imagine being afraid that I wasn't going to be able to make payroll because my money was all gone, and that's kind of where they were.
Yeah. So, between losses, potential losses with a bank, Wall Street related situations, right? Yep. Creditors coming after you. Someone gets hurt on one of your properties. Where can you keep, other than lifting your mattress up at night and shoving the money in there, earning no interest on it, so you can't hedge against the high inflation that we have right now, that they try to tell us is around 6 or 7. No, man, it's in like double digits, okay? They don't want everybody to freak out. I know I've been using that word a lot, but that's what people do.
Yeah, I mean, they were worried about a run. This last Sunday, I don't know if you guys saw, but last Sunday night is really when the federal government decided to step in on Monday and say we're going to back up all those loans.
Yeah, and who are they backing those loans up with? Their own money? Hell no. Your taxes, my taxes, your tax. That's where the money's coming from. That's where everything comes from the government. They don't produce product or services. Everything they have is based on the ability to tax the U.S. citizen. So, enough of the grim.
Yeah. So and that's kind of what we talked about. The number of things that you're involved in, but in particular, we talked about protection. And how we might how we could help protect. Because I know for me, we have like 8 flips going on right now. Right. I need that money. Right. I can't not access that money.
Right. So what do you do about it? Where do you put the money? Like I said, I'm then match. What are you going to do about that? You've got to find strategies that I offer, and they're available to everyone. Somewhere you can put your money that's safe, somewhere that the ultra-rich people would never let anything happen to the way that money works in the world. That's the huge deal. So I'm going to give you an example. You might not know this, and maybe you do. Banks own a little over $200 billion of life insurance on their own employees. Say what? Why? Why would they do that? There's a bunch of reasons why. For one, those insurance companies are over 200 years old. The ones that pay dividends, which is the ones that I deal with on a main basis, they've never missed a dividend payment, ever have they missed a dividend payment. You've never heard of a life insurance company or an annuity company ever go bankrupt. If they have trouble, another big company comes in and buys them and takes all their book of business. You'll never see them go out of business. So there's one of your safe plays.
So I know we talked about this before. We talked about just in terms of the insurance field. I know you and I talked about index life, right?
Index, whole life, yep.
Whole life.
Yep.
And can you explain that just briefly to everybody how that works? Because I thought was a pretty cool plan too, as far as how to protect your money, but also how to grow it.
Right. So if you want somewhere to grow your money, as good as what the stock market typically does, and if you take in the fees and the taxation that you normally have that are related to stock market investments, you're going to end up a lot better, and you're going to have what the stock market can never give you. Can never give you a guarantee that you won't lose your money. They don't do that. They'll guarantee that you have ups and downs in the market, and many people
Like
have
a
lost.
401k. I mean, a lot of people lost.
Same way.
Yep.
Because it's stock market related.
Yeah, and I know a lot of investors, you know, for a 401k plan is where, the reason we talk about it is not because people are dumping a lot of money, and it's because a lot of folks who are in the investment community, yeah, they use that money. They absolutely do. And if all of a sudden that money's gone, then how are they going to operate?
Well, yeah, and you have limitations with 401k plans too. You got to have a 5-year payback. When you take the money out, when you get your credited interest rate for that year, you only get it on the amount of money minus the loan you took. So now you have that, and then you're paying it back with what? After-tax dollars to pay the loan back. It's just, not saying the 401k loan is bad. I'm just saying it's not your best option if you have another strategy in place.
Yeah, we also talked the other day about the HELOC and why that may or may not be the best. Me personally, I don't want all my flips, my money is secured by my house as my HELOC,
Yeah.
right? And then if something falls down, here goes my house.
Right.
You know?
And there goes everything at one time.
Right.
So another part of the strategy of using life insurance contracts in particular is they're not reported to the state, they're not reported to the IRS, they're not reported to anyone.
They can't hear this, can they?
You can't hear me? Oh, yeah. Well, I think they can hear me without this, but yeah.
So you're saying that none of those transactions are reported.
That money that's inside of those contracts is unreportable to anyone, ever. And it's intentional.
Corey, you hear that?
Yeah, you know.
Wait a minute. Okay, all right.
Unfortunately, and I'm not that smart, and I mean it, I
Amen.
all C's. I'm trying to understand, and if y'all understand, fine. But my wife has a 401k.
Right.
She works for the federal government.
Yep. TSP plan. Yep.
This year she's lost like 30 grand.
Yep.
I'm like, what? But she made a lot of money the last 2
Sure.
years. Because we didn't switch it like idiots. We were supposed to switch it to the C fund, G fund, whatever.
You wrote it out.
Yeah, so are you saying are you saying take that money that's already there and put it over? Like I don't really understand.
You want to get all Corey's money out of 401k?
Not typically, but you can transfer that money without paying penalties the way people think you have to pay a penalty if you're not 59 and a half, which I'm assuming you're nowhere near 59 and a half, nor your wife is.
29 and a half.
Yeah, 29 and a half, exactly. So, I'm saying that maybe some of your contributions in the future may go somewhere elsewhere. Why have all your eggs in that one basket if that one basket can be obliterated with a
stock market drop?
The news comes on and says, oh man, the banks are doing, all of a sudden you see bank stock being sold like crazy. Everybody's pulling their money out of the banks, and that was part of your portfolio to have money in that bank, right? Yeah. And it goes down too.
But not only that, as you were just saying with the 401k, first of all that's going through the government's hands, right?
Taxes, it's reportable. They can take the whole thing. You can be sued. They can sue you for whatever's in your 401k plan because it's all reported,
Yeah, so basically in that case, and just like you said, Corey, we don't want all of our eggs in one. We all get that, right? Because if you're only doing wholesaling, it's gonna, it's not gonna diversify you enough. I know Joe does this, we do this. Typically as investors, we're into wholesaling, we're into buying holds and fixing flips, right? That's kind of how we.
So the icing for the cake, if you will, is to have the money inside of this contract that I'm speaking of, where you can borrow the money. When you pay back the interest, if you want to pay back the loan, because typically it'll pay itself back, the borrowing rate inside of a life insurance contract typically today are about 5%. You're going to make about 5 to 7% interest on that money. So in theory and in reality, and I know because I've done it, you'll borrow your own money, you'll get more money and interest back on the money that you borrowed. It'll pay itself back. Right. If you want to supercharge your contract, go ahead and pay the money back like you were going to if you borrowed it from a bank, right? Now, it's protected from anyone and everyone, okay? They don't know about it. You protected yourself in the event that you have mortgages outstanding and you pass away during that time period of paying the mortgage back.
Yeah, I mean,
right?
you always have that as a blanket.
Right.
Let's say you pass away, your 401k isn't going to dump a
Right.
blanket.
If you got $200,000 in your 401k and you pass away, but you got $500,000 of mortgages outstanding, you got $300,000 problem for your family, or your partner that you're in business with, or whoever, right? So
yeah, that's an added benefit. We talked a little bit about, again, that the power of this really is in the borrowing of the.
That's the hugest part of the whole
And
deal.
also
Yeah.
properly structured, because we read that all the time. That thing's got to be set up the right way.
Right. So you got to work with someone, and I've been in the business for 42 years. So again,
It's a long time.
longer than most people in here have been living. But that doesn't mean I've been doing it right. But
You got grandkids too?
yeah, I got a grandchild. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
You just
she's
had a grandchild, right?
Yep. She's 4 weeks old. So yeah. So thanks. So thank you.
So to pivot there, again,
Yeah.
that money inside of there, let's say you wanted to set up a plan for the baby, for her future, whether it be college or house. We talked about this the other night as well.
Right. So you do that, and then what you're doing for each one of those children, including yourself, is you start creating your own bank. I know that terminology is on all over the internet and thrown around by many different people, and many people think it's a joke, and most people think it's probably pretty good. But I know all about that. I've been doing it for a long time. Don't mean to sound like a know-it-all, but that's what I've been doing for 42 years. You don't stay in one business for 42 years unless you did it right. Right, you're just not going to make it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, so one of your expertise, again, is in this field. And to go back a little bit, Paul's past, really, you've been a firefighter, right?
Yep, I was a firefighter on West North Avenue in Marlborough Junction. The whole time I did that, I was either a financial planner with my own practice or a financial planner for banks. And the big banks, Wells Fargo, right, Wachovia, all the big banks you know about, I've represented them. And I've done all these types of strategies for their clientele.
Yeah, so I was going to say you have a background with the financial institutions. You know the ins and outs.
I know what they do.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, brother, we are all numbers to these banks. And if there's any bankers in here, I'm sorry if I'm offending you, but that's just the way it is. And I had to find out the hard way myself. You know, you are nothing but a number to them. You're a depositor, and they need your money. They loan your money out, right? They loan their money out to people at 8, 15, 20%, and they give us what in our checking accounts? How much? Yeah, 1%, 0.5%. What a joke, right? So be your own damn bank. You want to borrow money to get a property? Borrow the money from yourself. The interest crediting goes back to you, okay? And unlike a 401k loan, this is very important. Say you have $100,000 in a 401k plan, and you take a $50,000 loan from it, right? Yeah. You got to pay back the $50,000 loan. You got to pay the interest that comes along with it. You've got a 5-year period. You've got all these restrictions, okay?
I was going to say that in terms of the life insurance contract, how long can that be paid back?
It can be for 100 years. You can pay it back immediately. You can never have to pay it back. Just let the interest that is credited to the account, pay it back instead.
No, I wanted to ask you about that. So if you have $100,000, first of all, can anybody in here who may have 10K, 100K, 5K, can they dump that into one of these contracts right now?
Yes.
The whole amount, whatever they got,
The whole amount, or you can do it on an annual or monthly basis even.
All right, and so let's say somebody out there had $100,000, they wanted to put it into that account, and they want to use that, like you said, to kind of borrow against to do their rehabbing or whatever it might be. They can do that while that thing's gaining 5-6%.
Yep. So while you're making your 7% or 10% or 15% that you made on your property, you're making a constant 5, 6, or 7% inside your life insurance contract. And you get credited your dividend, your interest that's credited to the account is credited on the whole amount, not how much you borrowed, and minus on the yeah, right,
I just heard you.
on the whole account.
Wake up, Corey. Say amen, Corey. Come on, clap twice, Corey. Let's go, man.
Your 401k, when it earns 7%, let's say, you get 7% on whatever's in that account minus whatever you borrowed. Inside the life insurance contract, you get that 7% on the whole account value. Because you're not borrowing your money. Your money's acting as collateral against the insurance company. Okay?
Yeah, pretty good.
Now, how about the safety of a life insurance company? Because if I'm you, I'm thinking to myself, well, shit, I'm sorry. Shoot,
Paul,
the bank.
Paul, we're
sorry.
on film here. Adam, cut that out.
The banks are blowing up, man. So what's going to happen next to these life insurance companies? No, not going to happen. During the Great Depression, the first company I ever worked for helped bail out the United States government because they had bailed out the banks to such a point they were becoming illiquid themselves. Insurance companies have that kind of power. If you don't think that's true, what do you see on the Super Bowl and the World Series and NHL and NBA championship games? Who's got all the commercial time? John Hancock, Transamerica. It's all life insurance companies, man. They've got the money. They got the money. Yeah, Joe.
So basically the big picture is it's a life insurance policy.
Yep.
With a
Yep. Yep.
Can you
Yep.
repeat, tell everybody what he said?
Yep.
Joe, again, like I said, Joe's got a little bit of a background in this.
Yep. Yep. So it's a life insurance contract and it has a savings component within inside of it. But the savings component is guaranteed, it's tax-free, and it's unreportable to anyone. That's the 3 takeaways. You talk about the nuggets? Okay, there's your nuggets right there. Protect yourself from lawsuit. Protect yourself from having your money confiscated, okay, by anybody, by the government as well, right? And then protect your partner or your family, whoever's going to have that mortgage in their hand when you pass away before they do.
Okay, now I wanted to talk real quickly. How are we doing on time, Adam?
3.5 minutes.
3.5 minutes?
3.5 minutes. That's
5
good.
minutes? Okay. All right, cool. I know this component of it because you recently just mentioned this to me. So there's a couple interesting things that Paul had picked up just on the insurance side. And again, I want to stress that that is not the only thing that Paul is involved in, although he is definitely an expert in that field. There's several other financial things that he could help you with if you need help. He's happy to sit down and talk with you. We'll have his information up here as well. But you mentioned two quick things. So talk a little bit about that annuity, how you bought that book of business. I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. So
this is for wholesalers and just investors. This is a really cool thing that just kind of came about, Providence, you might say.
yeah. A friend of mine calls me that owns a PNC shop on Joppa Road, and he says, "Hey, Paul, there's a guy advertising to sell his annuity book. Where at?" You ready for this? On Craigslist. Swear to God.
A book of business on Craigslist.
I swear to God. I bought tires, I bought cars, I bought all kinds of other stuff, but I've never bought someone's business, book of business on Craigslist. But this guy, yeah. So I went to all his clientele and I said, look, these people are all 65 to 85 years of age. What they don't need anymore is tax deferment from an annuity. Is anyone familiar with annuities in here? Okay, good. So annuities let you save your money tax deferred, kind of like a 401k plan does. And then they'll offer you a guaranteed lifetime income if you want. You'll know what that payment is. It is that payment for the rest of your life. It'll never be less, it'll never be more. It's great. But these people, they needed the money to complete their plan. And that was to give them long-term care coverage. Right. Pay for taxes of their estate that had grown to such a point to where, and maybe it wasn't a whole bunch of growth. Maybe it was just they bought a little house for, like my mother, for instance. My mom bought a house for $35,000 down here in Edgemere, just down the street. That house is worth about $300,000 now. There's like $265,000 of taxable gain in that house. So what did I get my mother to do before she, right? Before God called her up?
Yep.
I had her buy a life insurance contract. Who paid the taxes? The life insurance company. How much did we pay for that almost $300,000 life insurance contract? I don't know, $70,000 total, all in.
That's crazy. Right?
70 grand for 300, tax-free, boom. So we get the $230,000 to us, tax-free, paid them off what they were owed for the taxation, done. It solves all kinds of problems, You can't stuff your your money on your mattress or in a bank cannot do that.
No.
Plus you got to worry about it getting taken from you.
So he was able to buy that book of business, the annuity book, which
right.
I think the guy was asking a certain price.
He wanted $20,000 for it. And I offered to take him to lunch, and he chose a place in Churchville where he lived. And I said, Bill, be prepared for me to give you 3 times the amount of money for that book of business when we meet tomorrow. And I could hear it in his voice, man. He couldn't wait to talk to me some more about that. I said, I'll meet you tomorrow. Where's the place? Chinese food buffet in Churchville. I said, well, this guy's a cheap date. So, yeah. So that's where we met. So he went from this position when we sat down to, my face was here and so was his. He was like, all right, tell me why you'd want to give me 3 times the amount of money for my book. I said, look, man, you know your clientele better than I ever will know them. If I call them and say, I'm the new guy taking over Bill's book of business, they're going to go, click. That's what they're going to do. They don't know me, but they know you. So I hired him on to go through his book of business and make appointments for me, all his people. Yeah. He would fax the appointment, not email, not text. And it wasn't that long ago, okay? It was only like maybe 6 years ago. Not email, not text. He would fax appointments to me each day. Okay, your next appointment's at this road. It's with this woman, this man, they're this age.
I mean, to just give some idea of what that 60 grand turned into? I know there was at least one deal where you
$883,000 from 15 people.
Oh my gosh, it's crazy, right?
They're not here to brag about that. Yeah, not here to brag about that, but just one client, and we'll wrap this up, okay?
Yeah.
I met this one lady. She wants to give all of her money to Cecil College. They were a community college back then. They're now a 4-year school. She had $883,000, and I said, Julia, that is such a nice thing for you to give that money to that college, because, you know, help kids get scholarships and go to school with, and tuition and this, that, and the other. She was 81 years old. We ended up transferring that money into a $1.8 million life insurance contract. So she got $1.8 million to pass on to that school instead of $883,000, which had to be taxed, by the way. Had to be taxed first, so they would have got maybe $600,000 out of it. Instead, they get $1.8 million. So there's another way you use life insurance. If you want to use it for your church, for your family, whoever, you can use it that way too. All right.
Yeah, so I mean, we're just honestly, Paul could talk about this all day. I've sat and listened to him, just listened to the people that he's come across and how he's helped them. And that really is, if you guys want to come up and meet Paul, talk to him, he's got a card up here you can do the quick scan on.
Yeah.
I wanted to also just real briefly say this. So let's say you know somebody who is your hard money lender or your private money lender. One of the things that Paul could help them do is to take that money, because we talked about this a lot, where they put that money inside of one of those insurance programs, and they can keep on bringing that private money to you. You know how these private money sources, we don't like sharing them, right? We like to keep them to ourselves. But that's something that you can give them that they can set up, and at the very, very least, they've got the death benefit, but there's so many more. So just want to thank you guys all for coming again. We appreciate you. Corey, if you can come in and wrap us up.
Thank you, Shane.
Yep.